show of hands, who has heard that acupuncture is based on energy medicine? Okay, so this is wrong, and hopefully by the end we will get to why it's wrong, and it actually makes a lot more sense than what people will say about it. So usually I do this lecture, it's like over 2 days, 8 hours a day, but we're going to cut it down to 15 minutes, so hopefully this works. So start with a brief history of Chinese medicine. So we have records of people doing medicine in China back 4,000 some years. We have records of certain herbs being used. At that time, it was all, like you would see in Europe and the Middle East, very shamanistic, where there would be one healer guy, and they would have their own special techniques, and they would have certain prayers with the gods and whatnot. So this all changes. By 265 BC, we have the first full book detailing the system of Chinese medicine called Hongdi Neijing. And in this book, it's a specific rejection of those shamanistic practices. So you don't have vomiting because you upset the tree spirit. It's a natural phenomenon that has a progression that we can predict. And we can use certain techniques to heal it. So by this point, you see acupuncture in more or less its modern form. You see a lot of herbal formulas, details on massage techniques, different nutrition. So, and they also display what for the time was an advanced anatomical knowledge. They described that the heart will pump the blood to the lungs, then it goes where it exchanges with the clean air and then comes back to the heart, which then goes to the rest of the body. So they were pretty good for the time. And again, they do use some language of spirits and whatnot, but they're not talking about actual spirits. They're using common terms that people would understand. So much like with mental illness, they would say like, you know, they would say people were possessed by spirits or whatnot, but it was considered to be natural phenomena. So after this, we go through about 1,500 or so years where the technology is fairly stagnant. They start with bone and stone needles, but by the time the Meiji comes about, they have bronze. It will later develop into iron, but mostly they would use gold and silver. And there's no real advancement in technology. Other than, with more contact with distant cultures, they start getting more and more herbal knowledge, which they use pretty effectively. So we said that they had advanced anatomical knowledge due to cultural differences with Confucianism. That stops at this point. It becomes a system like in Europe where you're no longer allowed to desecrate bodies. So they couldn't do any sort of dissections and learn more about it. So that brings us up to the 1950s, where we have standardization. A lot of critics of acupuncture and Chinese medicine will say it doesn't have any history before this, and that's not true. What happened was, even though there were the books and the basics that everybody would have to know, there was no official system. It was more like an apprenticeship. So usually your family was physicians, you would become a physician. You may apprentice yourself to this family. But in the 1950s, under Mao Zedong, they said, okay, we are forming an official university system, and they needed certain criteria. They said, okay, these are the official syndromes. If you have a stroke, okay, then we'll use these points for the stroke. And that carries into today. So most of what we have in the world, other than Korea and Japan, comes from this. So quick history in the West. It really starts in the 1600s. The Dutch have a trading post colony in Japan, where they have people who start to translate this knowledge and bring it back. So in the 1650s, we have records of Dutch physicians performing acupuncture, manufacturing their own needles. Okay, big question everybody doesn't understand, qi. Unfortunately, in my industry, people use this word too much. I think I've been here since March, I've only used the word qi one time with a patient, and it's because they said it to me first. I don't like talking about qi because it's a very confusing subject which can almost come to blows in almost any situation. But when we're talking about qi in a medical sense, we're talking really about two things. So one thing is metabolism, another thing is the functional ability of the organ. So going back in the Huangdi Meiji, it's written as a dialogue between the emperor and one of his ministers. And so the emperor asks his minister, who's a physician, okay, where does qi come from? And so the minister says, first you eat and drink things, and it turns into wei qi when it goes through digestion. And then it travels up, it goes to the chest where you exhale, dirty qi, zang qi. You inhale clean air, which is qing qi, that becomes zhong qi. Then you, based on your yuan qi is a similar concept to genetics. So based on your genetic makeup, which you got from your parents, which would be similar to other family members, it then becomes zhen qi, which is correct qi, which splits into wei and ying qi. Wei qi is very similar to the concept of an immune system. It protects you from external pathogens. And then ying qi is nutritive qi. So it nourishes the body, blood would be considered part of it. Okay, so it's a lot of qis. What does that mean? You eat and drink things which are digested into nutrients, which, based on your genetic makeup and when combined with oxygen, can provide you with the energy you need to live and the building blocks to maintain your body, and also a defensive system, an immune defensive system against external pathogens. So it's not nearly as crazy as it sounds, and also no energy, right? No energy from the cosmos, no God coming down and recharging you for the day. So this is where people get in trouble. There's three main areas where people talk about qi these days: medicine, kung fu, and Taoism. So we just talked about medicine. In kung fu, the application of qi is always about punching harder, becoming immovable, jumping higher, something like that. Taoism is where it's a religion and also philosophy, depending on how you consider it. This is where people sort of start to get lost, because here you talk about qi in a cosmic sense, in how the universe functions and our place in it. And if you understood the different meanings, it would be okay. But the problem is this chart is a little bit inaccurate. It actually looks more like this, and there is some overlap. So the Chinese medicine does have a lot of Taoist and Confucianism ideas, but when we're talking about qi specifically, it's more, there's a thought of how humans are supposed to live in harmony with nature in terms of your behavior. So you have things like, now we would say eating seasonally, because those are the foods that will help you. Times you go to bed, things like this. Okay. So yin and yang, people get confused about this too. It's just a system of duality, right? So, and it's often excess or deficiency. So you could have bradycardia or you could have tachycardia. You want somewhere in the middle. So usually when we're talking about issues of yin and yang, it's like you have too much of something, we need to reduce it, or you don't have enough, we need to build it up. And then there's the system of the 5 elements. People often get confused about this too. So first of all, the term 5 elements is not really a great translation. In Chinese, it's Wu Xing. Xing would be more like phases or movements. So the classical people, they didn't understand molecules, they didn't understand chemical reactions, but they could see things in nature. So for example, fire. The characteristics of fire are there's warmth, heat. Fire always moves in an upward direction. It wants to burn upward. So anything that would have that sort of relationship, that's what it's called. Water would be the opposite. It goes down, it's cool. So when we relate these to medicine, we're talking about some diseases will be more prevalent in the upper body. They'll have heat. Some will have cold. They'll have more water retention, like edema, like frequent urination. And so it's just a metaphor. So I teach this in Brazil, and there's one guy, he's an older Kung Fu master, and he comes to me and he says, Scott, I had a Chinese medicine doctor tell me my liver was bad, and I see on your chart that liver relates to the element of wood. He said, so does that mean I need to go out in the forest and practice more Kung Fu? I said, no, no, no. What it means is that your body, there's some blockage where the nutrients aren't going all over. So the function of the liver in Chinese medicine, one of them is to spread the nutrients all over the body. Okay, so traditionally, treatment methodologies. So in the progression of disease, when it's not very serious, you would start with diet and exercise. After that, it becomes more serious, you would do massages and topical medical treatments, could be ointment, could be a plaster, whatnot. Then you would have acupuncture. More serious condition requires herbal medicine, and then based on what it is, may require surgery. Okay, so how does acupuncture work? So there, in a Western sense, there is no one really good explanation. All right, so we'll go real quick here. Usually there's three main ways. Sometimes it's just you're putting needles through the muscles, through the fascia, in order to get them to release. That's a lot of pain. People have knots. Second is hacking the brain. There's a lot of research that needles can affect specific areas of the brain, like the hypothalamus, you could have the pineal gland, and you are able to tune it up, tune it down. And then also there's an issue of tricking the body into thinking it's damaged. So the needles are very thin and they don't really cause, I mean, assuming you're not putting it somewhere you shouldn't, they're not causing actual damage to the body, but the body senses damage. So it starts to release its own endorphins, different healing agents, sending more blood into those areas. Okay, so according to the WHO, these are the 100% uncontested via scientific research that acupuncture can be used for these areas. There's like another 80 that they say, yes, it's good to use, but we still want more testing. And then there's like another 50 that are, yeah, it's good, but we only have a single source. So it's becoming more and more studied, and you can start to see the results. So for people here, practically, okay, what does that mean for you? If you have anyone who needs pain management and they might be on potentially addictive medication, acupuncture is a good way to start. The needles are not addictive. There's no medicine on it. The state of California doesn't like me to say it, but we can treat anything. Why? Because we were a complete system of medicine before modern medicine hit China. So it's a question of which treatment is better. And there's a lot of treatments that standard medical care is definitely better than what we could do. But there are others that we do better. And there are some that are more patient's choice, where usually it works out. Modern pharmaceuticals are faster, but you have more side effects and potential for addiction. So we do a lot of work, pain, including women's health, painful menstruation, Any sort of sports medicine or orthopedic injury, we can pretty much take care of. Neurologic, we do pretty well. You still have the best treatments for Bell's palsy. And yeah, that's about it, time-wise.